Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, ending decades of conflict. President Trump hosting the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan for a peace deal. Also, a new trade route and talk of a meeting with Russia. Mari Otsu at the White House. Fighting in Ukraine continues despite arrival of the deadline set by President Trump. Arian Pazdar has what officials are saying about increasing economic pressure on Russia. Israeli forces move forward with plans to take over the Gaza Strip, but some are saying that expanding the war risks the lives of the hostages. Jason Perry reports. A rapidly spreading fire in the Los Angeles area forces more than 4,000 residents to evacuate their homes. California has secured a federal grant to help fight the Canyon Fire. David Lamb with the update. Democratic holdouts in the Texas House of Representatives were missing again today for a special session after fleeing the state to block a vote on redistricting. As those lawmakers head to California to meet with Governor Gavin Newsom, a lawsuit is asking for their arrest. Arlene Richards brings us the latest.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. President Trump today welcoming the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan to the White House for the signing of a peace agreement, one aimed at ending nearly 4 decades of fighting. He also confirmed a meeting with Russian leader Vladimir Putin. Joining us now live is NTD's Washington correspondent Mari Otsu. Good evening, Mari. What is the latest from the trilateral signing today?
Good evening, Tiff. Yeah, there's been a lot of movement and buzz here at the White House this Friday as President Trump welcomed the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan to celebrate a peace deal between the two nations. At the signing of the peace deal, though, the big question that was really on all of the reporters' minds was about the ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. The president confirmed he's meeting with Putin very shortly and that he'll announce that location as early as later today. Take a look.
And I think we're getting very close, and we're going to be announcing later on we're going to have a meeting with Russia. We'll start off with Russia, and we'll announce a location. I think the location will be a very popular one for a lot of reasons.
And the president suggested that there will be swapping of territories between Russia and Ukraine as part of a potential deal. Tiff?
And Mari, what is the latest on the peace deal?
Yeah, the two countries have been in conflict for almost 40 years, and this new peace deal secures a commitment to stop all fighting. Here's President Trump touting the deal that he helped broker. Watch.
For more than 35 years, Armenia and Azerbaijan have fought a bitter conflict that resulted in tremendous suffering for both nations. They suffered gravely for so many years. Many tried to find a resolution, including the European Union. The Russians worked very hard on it, never happened. Sleepy Joe Biden tried, but you know what happened there. He tried for probably 12 minutes and didn't work out. And many other countries tried, and they were unsuccessful. But with this accord, we've finally succeeded in making peace.
Trump also made separate bilateral deals with both nations on energy, technology, and trade. The deal also includes giving the U.S. exclusive access to a new transit route across southern Armenia. The White House says the route is key to energy resources and will help counter China and Iran. The route will be named the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity. As Trump says he aspires to bring peace to the world, the Azerbaijani leader suggesting Trump should get the Nobel Peace Prize. Take a look.
Without any result. So who, if not President Trump, deserves the Nobel Peace Prize? I don't want to go into the history of some very strange decisions of the Nobel Peace Committee to award the prize for someone who didn't do anything at all. But President Trump, in 6 months, did a miracle.
These remarks come just one day after the leader of Cambodia nominated President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize for halting the dispute between Cambodia and Thailand. Today's signing also follows other recent successes by President Trump in brokering peace with India and Pakistan and the Congo and Rwanda. Tiff, back to you.
All right, Mari, thanks for those updates. Attacks on Ukraine continue today despite the arrival of President Trump's deadline for Russia to end the war. Officials at home and abroad comment on the prospect of increased economic pressure on Russia. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has more on the peace efforts.
First responders in Kharkiv dealt with the aftermath of a Russian attack on Friday. Ukrainian officials say a drone strike killed at least 2 people. Just a day earlier, 6 civilians died across Ukraine amid Russian attacks. The reported attacks came despite a Friday deadline for Russia to strike a peace deal with Ukraine. Meanwhile, a bipartisan group of senators is working on a bill to impose more sanctions on Russia. Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal on Friday said the proposal would impose stronger sanctions than executive action by Trump.
The Trump order is a hammer. What we would apply is a sledgehammer with higher sanctions, 500% as opposed to 100%, and broader, we would go against the Russian shadow fleet.
But he added that he was encouraged when he first heard about Trump's warning of more sanctions. And on Friday morning, European leaders also commented on possible sanctions on Russia by President Trump, such as the Foreign Minister of Finland.
Well, I certainly hope that President Trump will move forward with those sanctions.
The Prime Minister of Poland, meanwhile, says he thinks Russia and Ukraine might soon agree to a ceasefire as the US is ramping up peace efforts.
There are certain signals that a freeze in the conflict is closer than before. There are hopes for this.
Trump is expected to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in the coming days. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is calling on Europe to support the current peace efforts, saying the United States is determined to achieve a ceasefire and we must jointly support all constructive steps. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was recently asked about the goals of the Trump-Putin meeting and whether the talks could lead to an end of the fighting. Rubio told EWTN that more steps might be needed.
Look, if we can arrive at a final deal and it's over completely, that would be great. We'd prefer that, a permanent ceasefire.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need an interim ceasefire simply to get everybody to the table and to talk. Because I've seen in the past, you have talks going on, something blows up somewhere, and people just walk away from the table.
Trump recently said he doesn't know yet what Putin wants to achieve in the meeting, adding that he'll find out after the talks. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
In the Middle East, Israel is facing criticism as it continues plans to take over the Gaza Strip. But Israel's prime minister said today that Israel plans not to occupy Gaza, but to, quote, free Gaza from Hamas. NTD's Jason Perry has the update.
A military aircraft was seen flying over Gaza City on Friday. Gaza City, which is in the northern Gaza Strip, is largely destroyed due to the war between Israel and Hamas, but many have taken refuge there in tents near the beach. But that could soon change. Late Thursday night, Israel's prime minister's office said that Israeli forces will prepare to take control of Gaza City and at the same time distribute humanitarian assistance to the civilian population outside the combat zones. Also, Israel's security cabinet, by majority vote, adopted 5 principles for ending the war, which are the disarming of Hamas, the return of all the hostages, the living and the deceased, the demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, Israeli security control in the Gaza Strip, and the establishment of an alternative civil administration that is neither Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a post on X that Israel does not plan to occupy Gaza, but rather that Israel is going to, quote, free Gaza from Hamas. A resident in Gaza City shared his thoughts on the situation.
Practically all of Gaza has been squeezed into the western part of Gaza City, and that's all that's left. Just that, West Gaza City. At this point, for the people, there's no difference anymore, whether he occupies it or not.
Israel is also facing international criticism over its decision to do a full military takeover of the Gaza Strip. The president of the European Union Commission said on X that Israel's latest decision to expand its operations, quote, must be reconsidered. U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, addressed the criticism.
I don't understand why some of these other nations are once again putting all the pressure on Israel and why they're not putting the pressure on Hamas to let the hostages go, all of them, including the ones that are clearly starving. That's what I think we all scratch our heads over.
Meanwhile, in Israel, families of hostages shared their concerns about Israel expanding military operations in Gaza.
What we're saying is that expanding the war would risk so many more hostages that they mustn't do it. My cousin was murdered in Rafah because they decided to expand the war into Rafah. She was there, she was alive, and she was murdered by her captors because the IDF was approaching.
20 hostages are believed to still be alive in the Gaza Strip. Jason Perry, NTD News.
As Israel plans to take control of Gaza City, will this help accelerate humanitarian aid to the Palestinians? And will it help Israel achieve its goal of eradicating Hamas? Tonight, tune into NTD's Capital Report at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You'll hear insights from Joseph Moreno, legal and national security analyst. A new fire has erupted in the West. The Canyon Fire has caused thousands of people to evacuate their homes in Southern California. And FEMA has approved a federal grant to assist with firefighting efforts. NTD's David Lamb reports.
Skies are painted orange in parts of Southern California from the Canyon Fire that started Thursday afternoon. California Governor Gavin Newsom said on Friday that the state has secured a federal grant from FEMA. Local, state, and tribal agencies can apply for 75% reimbursement for helping with the fire. The fire started in Ventura County and then spread to Los Angeles County, burning over 5,000 acres. Almost 400 personnel are on a mission to put out the Canyon Fire. It has forced more than 4,300 residents to evacuate the area, in which authorities say the fire poses an immediate threat to life. Another 12,000 are under evacuation warnings. At the same time, the Gifford Fire in Central California has burned almost 100,000 acres and is only 15% contained after burning for a week. These fires come on the second anniversary of the Hawaii fires that devastated the island of Maui in August 2023. The Canyon Fire is 25% contained. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
Coming up, President Trump rolls out federal law enforcement in Washington, D.C., an action he said he was contemplating earlier this week. Jason Blair reports. The state and justice departments have doubled the reward to $50 million for information leading to the arrest of Venezuela's Maduro. Jack Bradley has more on why they're raising the stakes and the administration's efforts to combat criminal gangs in the U.S. after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. President Trump has removed former Congressman Billy Long as IRS commissioner. Long says he'll now have a new role as ambassador to Iceland. So far, no reason has been given for Long's dismissal. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will step in as acting commissioner. Before Long's confirmation, the IRS had cycled through 4 acting leaders. One resigned after a controversial data sharing deal with Homeland Security, and another sparked a feud between Bessent and former Trump advisor Elon Musk. Long served in Congress from 2011 to 2023. He once introduced legislation to eliminate the IRS. President Trump sends federal law enforcement officers to the nation's capital today, saying it's in response to long-term violent crime. The move comes days after a former Department of Government Efficiency staffer was attacked. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
Now, we want to have a great, safe capital, and we're going to have it.
President Trump deploys additional federal law enforcement in Washington, D.C., citing ongoing violent crime. The White House says the officers started a 7-day deployment on Friday at an established command center. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the city, quote, has been plagued by violent crime for far too long. And President Trump has directed an increased presence of federal law enforcement to protect innocent citizens. The operation is being led by U.S. Park Police and includes officers from the U.S. Capitol Police, Homeland Security Investigations, Drug Enforcement Administration, and several others. Earlier this week, President Trump said that he was thinking about the move.
We're considering it, yeah, because the crime is ridiculous.
This is following a Sunday attack on a former Department of Government Efficiency staffer by a group of about 10 minors in Washington, D.C. Washington police say that the staffer was trying to prevent a carjacking. Trump posted on Truth Social local youths and gang members, some only 14, 15, and 16 years old, are randomly attacking, mugging, maiming, and shooting innocent citizens. Washington, D.C.'s Attorney General Brian Schwab said on Tuesday that his office is focusing on holding minors liable.
You know that among other things we have to do in the Office of Attorney General is we prosecute juvenile crime and we hold young people accountable when they break the law. That's something that's critically important, something we're going to continue to do.
On March 28th, Trump signed an executive order establishing the D.C. Safe and Beautiful Task Force. Along with ensuring maximum enforcement of immigration law in D.C., the order also directs the task force to work with local police to support a, quote, more robust law enforcement in areas of the city. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
And do D.C. residents support President Trump's decision to increase federal police presence in the nation's capital? NTD's Sam Wong was out in the Navy Yard neighborhood to hear from the folks.
Do you feel safe being in the city?
Yes, yeah, I feel incredibly safe in the city.
Depends on where and depends on the timing.
How about Navy Yard?
Navy Yard is not necessarily a place that I would feel safe at all different hours of the day.
There's a couple times I've been in the morning. Shootings down at Harris Teeter. Safety officer got shot or something like that, and they had all the streets blocked off.
The city has a history of, crime. I don't think it's any significantly different than any other city, on a per capita basis.
And I know there's been concern online about, especially these scooters, e-bikes, that they're running those down sidewalks and into crowds, and so, but. I feel safe.
There's been a couple of times during ball games that stuff has gone down. I haven't been directly there to see it, that I know has happened right here while I've been down at games before. I still feel reasonably safe walking around here. I mean, I don't know if that's going to be for everybody. I'm a pretty big guy. That might not be what everybody's thinking walking around here.
President Trump has ordered to increase the presence of federal law enforcement here in D.C. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that adequately addresses the safety issue here?
No, I don't think so.
Sure do. More the better.
I wouldn't say more or less. No, I feel fine. But this is a safe neighborhood when I'm in it.
I can see if he's truly concerned about safety, I can see the value behind it. I just think that overall the city of D.C. has a much more systemic issues with their police department than that.
I want to feel comfortable going around a neighborhood and not having to worry about safety, but also not having to worry about having a police officer on every corner. It's very intimidating.
I like that his positive steps toward keeping the people of D.C. safe. There has to be law and order, 100%.
The U.S. is raising the reward for information leading to the arrest of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. The price tag is high, now at $50 million. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more.
Maduro uses foreign terrorist organizations like TDA, Sinaloa, and Cartel of the Suns to bring deadly drugs and violence into our country.
The U.S. has doubled the reward to arrest Venezuela's socialist leader, Nicolas Maduro. They're now offering $50 million for such information leading to his arrest. Attorney General Pam Bondi accused Maduro of collaborating with foreign gangs in the U.S. like Venezuela's Tren de Aragua, the Sinaloa cartel, MS-13, and several Mexican cartels.
He is one of the largest narco traffickers in the world and a threat to our national security. Under President Trump's leadership, Maduro will not escape justice, and he will be held accountable for his despicable crimes.
The Trump administration has designated these gangs as foreign terrorist organizations, allowing for their swift arrest and deportation.
We cannot continue to just treat these guys as local street gangs. They have weaponry that looks like what terrorists, in some cases armies have. They control territory in many cases. Those cartels extend from the Maduro regime in Venezuela, which is not a legitimate government. We don't recognize the Maduro regime as legitimate. It is a criminal enterprise.
The reward for Maduro's arrest was first set at $15 million back in 2020 when Maduro was charged with drug trafficking. In January, it was moved up to $25 million after Maduro was sworn in for a third term, which both the U.S. and most Latin American countries have called an illegitimate election. Thus far, the U.S. has seized over $700 million in Maduro's assets, including 2 private jets and 9 vehicles, and the DEA has seized over 30 tons of cocaine linked to Maduro and his partners. And the cocaine is often laced with fentanyl, particularly coming from China. According to the DEA, fentanyl poisonings kill around 100,000 Americans every year. It's the #1 cause of death among Americans aged 18 to 44. 2024. In July, the Trump administration helped free 10 Americans detained in Venezuela in a prisoner swap. In exchange, the U.S. released over 250 Venezuelan gang members that were deported to a prison in El Salvador. And a significant factor aiding Maduro's authoritarian regime is the Chinese Communist Party. The CCP offers the Venezuelan regime economic support through oil purchases, military support, and even diplomatic support over at the United Nations. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
And we have some breaking news. President Trump announcing the time and location that he'll be meeting with Russian leader Vladimir Putin. Here's what he wrote on Truth Social moments ago. Quote, the highly anticipated meeting between myself as President of the United States of America and President Vladimir Putin of Russia will take place next Friday, August 15th, 2025 in the great state of Alaska. Further details to follow. Coming up in the Texas House of Representatives, Democratic holdouts were missing again today for a special session. That's despite a lawsuit asking for their arrest and increasing pressure from Republican leaders. What's next in the showdown? Zach Smith from the Heritage Foundation joins us to discuss. And local farmers and producers spread out across the National Mall in D.C. this week. The first ever Great American Farmers Market showcasing the heart of our nation, agriculture. Melina Weiskup takes us there after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. There weren't enough Texas Democrats present today to reach the necessary quorum for a Texas House session. Meanwhile, the Speaker of the House and other members have filed a lawsuit to have the missing Democrats arrested. NTD's Arlene Richards has more.
There being 94 members present, a quorum is not present.
The Texas House failed to make a quorum on Friday. Meanwhile, the missing Democrats are meeting in California with Governor Gavin Newsom and other Democratic leaders. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi and other prominent California Democrats host a press conference with the Texas lawmakers on Friday. Texas Democrats were warned to return to Austin by Friday or face consequences. They fled to Illinois on Sunday to protest Republicans' efforts to change the map of congressional districts. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton gave a stern warning on Tuesday. In a social media post, he said, I will seek judicial orders declaring that runaway Democrats who failed to appear by the Speaker's deadline have vacated their office. On Thursday, the Texas House of Representatives filed a lawsuit in an Illinois circuit court. The lawsuit was filed by the Texas Office of Attorney General and Illinois State Senator Jill Walker Tracy. It names 33 House Democrats remaining in Illinois as defendants and calls for their arrest. Texas House Speaker Dustin Burrows had signed 56 civil arrest warrants on Monday. Since then, 8 Democrats have been present in the House. In other efforts to compel the Democrats to return, Burrows said Thursday that direct deposit would be turned off for the missing lawmakers. Instead, they will be required to collect their monthly paycheck and per diem in person. Former U.S. Representative from Texas Beto O'Rourke told CNN on Wednesday that he was raising funds for Democratic holdouts.
They're trying to stop the consolidation of authoritarian power in America as Trump and Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton and the Republicans in Texas, thick as thieves, try to steal these 5 seats in Texas.
Democrats are believed to be in several states, including New York, Massachusetts, Illinois, and California. At the session, Speaker Burrows announced that a lawsuit had been filed and said he expects more lawsuits to be filed in other states. He called on all Democratic members to be present on Monday at 1 p.m. Central Time for the next session. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
And this afternoon, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton asked the state Supreme Court to expel those 13 Democrats from the state legislature. Joining us now to discuss is former federal prosecutor Zach Smith. He's now a legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Zach, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you again. Now, in response to the absent Democrats, civil arrest warrants have been issued, and Texas Senator John Cornyn says the FBI will join in. Now, first, the civil arrest warrants can't be enforced out of state, but AG Ken Paxton is working on action that would allow for that. Talk to us about the law here. How would that work, and is that why the FBI is being called on to help?
Well, thank you for having me on the show this evening. And look, I think we need to step back and understand, as a threshold matter, there is nothing improper or illegal or inappropriate about the Texas House seeking to do mid-cycle redistricting. In fact, I think there's a very good argument that they should, in fact, engage in this type of mid-cycle redistricting, given Texas's population growth, given some problems with the previous census that occurred. This is an appropriate and good thing. And I think the irony shouldn't be lost on anyone that these Democratic lawmakers fled to Illinois, one of the most gerrymandered states in the nation, with that gerrymandering being, of course, in favor of Democratic politicians and Democratic candidates. Now, in terms of what happens from here, I think you rightly outlined many of the steps that are taken, many of the steps that are happening. If a criminal arrest warrant is issued for any of these lawmakers, if it is in fact a criminal violation of Texas law, then in that case, the FBI, other federal law enforcement officials could certainly get involved and help make sure these representatives show back up to the state of Texas to do their duty. I think that's also why, in part, you're seeing efforts to declare their seats vacated because they are choosing not to do their duty and show up and represent the constituents who elected them.
And on that note, regarding AG Paxton filing a lawsuit in the Texas Supreme Court right to pursue judicial declarations that those 13 Texas House seats have been vacated due to continued unlawful absences, what can the Texas Supreme Court do in this case?
Yeah, so obviously that is a matter of much debate. Right now, I think you're seeing both members of the state house, you're seeing Governor Greg Abbott trying to take all measures short of these very extreme measures, such as declaring the seats vacated. I think you're seeing targeted action against specific representatives who have been particularly outspoken about the fact that they do not intend to return to Texas to do their duty. And so I think certainly one step would be for their seats to be declared vacated and for elections to potentially be held to fill those vacated seats. Now, of course, this is an extreme step, and I think many of these lawmakers would be well served to simply do their duty and return to Texas.
Now, another angle, Governor Abbott is saying that if the Democratic lawmakers continue to hold out, the redistricting proposal might be expanded to 6 to even 8 new seats, up from that original 5. How would that work? And is this legal or in line with the law's intent?
Well, I certainly think it would be legal for Texas to look at this. And again, I think you can make an argument that Texas has an obligation to look at this type of redistricting. Many people don't realize, but earlier in July, Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division, Harmeet Dillon, she actually sent a letter to Texas officials letting them know that in her view, several Texas congressional districts actually violate federal civil rights laws, and that Texas officials need to take a look at those districts to see whether or not they comport with existing law. And so again, not only is this effort to do mid-cycle redistricting not improper, I think there are very compelling arguments that Texas officials are exactly right to look at taking such actions, particularly in light of the letter from Harmeet Dillon, particularly in light of the population growth in Texas, and particularly in some of the questions surrounding the 2020 census.
I want to expand on that because Abbott is pointing to that court ruling last year. He's also noting, as you mentioned, the election results from last year as justification for this mid-decade redistricting. Now, talk to us about the legal arguments that he's making here as an Abbott.
Well, I think one of the arguments about whether or not current congressional districts comport with the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, for instance, stemmed from a recent ruling. And it gets fairly technical very fast, but essentially there is a Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, that's the federal appeals court that oversees Texas as well as several other states, issued a ruling saying that coalition districts are not permissible under either the Constitution or the Voting Rights Act. And essentially coalitions districts are where map drawers try to cobble together several different racial or ethnic groups to get a majority-minority district even though that district may not be composed solely of a majority of one racial or ethnic minority. Now, this practice of majority-minority districts is very controversial. You may remember, rightly so, the Supreme Court recently said the Constitution is supposed to be colorblind. And in fact, the U.S. Supreme Court is set to hear a very important redistricting case in its upcoming term that starts in October, dealing with this very question about racial redistricting. And so again, I think Texas lawmakers are well within their rights to get out in front of many of these very important questions and issues.
Zach, I want to zoom in on that last part. As you mentioned, the Supreme Court does have this case, Louisiana versus Calif, where the High Court may rule on a law aimed at protecting the power of minority voters. Talk to us about what this ruling could mean if it does strike down some of the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah, so Louisiana versus Calif, this is a challenge to a Louisiana redistricting where Louisiana representatives drew several majority-minority districts. Now, the tension is lawmakers are saying that the Voting Rights Act requires them to take race into account when drawing congressional and other legislative districts, and yet the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause says that government officials are not supposed to take race into account when taking governmental action, particularly when drawing legislative districts. And so there's been some tension there for many years. Personally, I think the better legal and certainly the better moral argument is that race should not be considered. But again, as you mentioned, the Supreme Court will address this issue head on in its upcoming term, which begins in October.
Well, Zach Smith, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on the show.
As we approach the 250th year of America's founding, the Agriculture Department celebrates farmers, ranchers, and producers on the National Mall. NTD's Melina Weiskup takes us to the farmers market in Washington, D.C.
We are a veteran-owned, 100% pickle company. All veterans in it. We support veterans. We give back to Operation Homefront with some of our proceeds. They help military families and veterans.
The first ever Great American Farmers Market showcasing the heart of our nation, agriculture.
I love the story behind it. Veteran owned, and it's all natural, and he hand picks them and hand cuts them and all that. But the other part is they're just delicious.
Spicy pickles, microgreens, fresh eggs, cheese, jams, and jellies. All classic farm fresh eats found at these traditional pop-up markets.
And we put about 15, 20 gallons of clover honey in each barrel. And then we rotate it daily for about 6 months. We empty it out. We're using honey on the battlefield now to protect people who've been injured or shot.
Small business owners and farmers from around the nation have gathered here in Washington, D.C., joined by one simple message. Healthy food makes for a healthy body, makes for a healthy mind.
We raise our own pigs, and we do not give them any added growth hormones. We buy organic minerals and vitamins to give to the pigs, and we're very strict on how we raise them. Children walking around that's 10 years old, but they look like 13, 14 years old. That's coming from our food source.
Yeah, and I work in education, and you can see a difference when kids don't eat real good food, and yeah, it's just important. It keeps your body healthy.
The market, hosted by the USDA, is part of the administration's efforts to support American agriculture and to make healthy food more accessible.
Stage, and let's kick off this great American Farmers Market.
But USDA alone spends $405 million a day on nutrition programs, food stamps, etc., to begin to shift some of that money into buying more locally sourced healthy food, which again supports the smaller farmers.
Games teach kids about healthy eating. Live music and plenty of space for little ones to explore turns the popular tourist site into a family-friendly atmosphere.
Well, we saw that there might be Highland cows, so we wanted to come see some cows and some animals. And
nothing better than fresh veggies, and these look fabulous right here behind us. So
vendors spread out across the National Mall to share their hand-picked and handmade veggies and treats.
I will try the black pepper.
what makes this different than the corn you would see in the store or at the movie theater?
Oh, well, we make it fresh and hot right out of the kettle. Ma'am, would you like a sample? Kentucky grown kernels. And so that's a little different too.
This market is just one of thousands across the nation. As National Farmers Market Week nears its end, the USDA reminds families to make a stop by their local markets and support American goods. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Coming up in the NFL, the preseason continues tonight with a primetime triple header. Dave Martin reports. And a historic art club in California is showcasing its latest exhibition, celebrating timeless traditional artistry. Christina Corona takes a closer look at the stories behind some of the paintings when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. After a trio of NFL games last night, the league continues their preseason tonight with 3 more games on the schedule. NTD's Dave Martin has more.
Browns rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders, son of Deion Sanders, will get the start tonight for Cleveland as they play at the Carolina Panthers. Sanders, who starred last year at Colorado, famously fell in last May's NFL draft. Largely expected to be taken in the first round, Sanders slid all the way to round 5 before the Browns selected him, their second quarterback taken behind Dylan Gabriel of Oregon. But Gabriel and fellow quarterback Kenny Pickett are both sidelined with hamstring injuries, leaving Cleveland with just Sanders, 40-year-old veteran Joe Flacco, and the recently signed Tyler Huntley to compete for the position. Meanwhile, last year's starter Deshaun Watson continues to rehab an Achilles injury that could sideline him for most of the season. Elsewhere tonight, the Atlanta Falcons host the Detroit Lions while the Washington Commanders play at the New England Patriots. Last night's action saw a 23-all tie in Seattle between the Seahawks and the Las Vegas Raiders in a homecoming of sorts for longtime Seattle coach Pete Carroll. Meanwhile, in Baltimore, the Ravens got to Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson on a first-quarter sack, resulting in a dislocated pinky on Richardson's throwing hand. The third-year quarterback left the game and did not return as the Ravens won 24-16. And finally, in Philadelphia, the Cincinnati Bengals gave star quarterback Joe Burrow and their starters some extended playing time against the Eagles. Burrow, playing in just his third career preseason game, completed 9 of 10 passes for 123 yards, many of them to All-Pro receiver Jamar Chase, though the Super Bowl champions still won 34-27. This is Dave Martin for NTD News.
The California Art Club's annual show highlights classical fine art and its lasting impact. Artists from across the globe share their passion for traditional fine art. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
We're here in the city of Torrance at the VIFA Gallery, where the California Art Club is hosting their 114th annual gold medal exhibition, showcasing nearly 190 works of traditional fine art. Let's take a look and see what this iconic showcase means to some of the artists. Founded in 1909, the California Art Club has spent 116 years training artists in the classical style, preserving traditional arts and time-honored skills.
And the California Art Club was founded by the artists who were trained in Europe, mainly in Paris at the Academy and Julian Academy, and also Beaux-Arts. So we specialize in preserving traditional fine art skills in painting, drawing, and sculpting. The subject matter varies.
California Art Club CEO Elaine Adams says each work is deeply personal, reflecting the artist's lives, surroundings, and passions. Culver City artist Alexi Steele showcased a 10-year masterpiece, a large-scale portrait of his local city hero. The work expands his Love My Neighbor project, celebrating universally beloved neighbors as modern-day heroes.
And what is the true, to me, pure human aspect is these people who can impact people around them, who could build communities, who are building society. So my real world neighbor, Duke Gibbons, turned out to be exactly that, an amazing person, an artist, a tremendously important photographer.
Irvine Museum Award winner Richard Humphrey shared the inspiration behind his Smuggler's Cove painting.
The painting was really just kind of a revisiting of that wonderful experience as a child when we would, be walking down these hot, dusty trails with the sun or the heat radiating up from the ground, and you'd see that water out there and couldn't wait to get down onto the shoreline and dive into the water.
Humphrey says many of his works reflect a lifelong connection to the Palos Verdes Peninsula. He often paints on location using photos and sketches to finish in his studio, a process that takes about 2 months. And what does traditional and realist art mean to these artists?
Traditional art to me is so important because it's able to convey stories and it's able to convey feelings. Unfortunately, modern art, most of it, can't really tell a story.
It's the art that is handmade. It has a vision. It has a sense to it. It has a story behind it. It's something that you can look at over and over and over and find new things each time.
I guess I would call it representational because first, it's actually seeing something that you can understand.
From timeless techniques to fresh perspectives, the 114th annual Gold Medal exhibition celebrates the enduring beauty of traditional fine art. Christina Corona, NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. Round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.